Hello, everybody. So, welcome to an amazing, wonderful, fantastic webinar where I'm going to be going over some real estate math. So, if you're here watching live, please do hit that big thumbs up. Give me a smile in the chat wherever you're watching, and we'll get the show on the road. So, today, what I want to do is this. I want to talk about some math tips that I have for you because a lot of you are always concerned with all different kinds of math tips that you want to make sure that we cover and go over. So, like I said, if you are watching live with me, please do let me know in the chat that you can hear me loud and clear. It really does help me out. And also, if you're here live, just feel free to type anything in that you would like, no matter what platform you're watching on. So, that being said, what I want to do is this. I want to talk about some of the tips that I think are the most important for any student who is going to take the real estate exam to conquer the math section. Now, here's the thing. I don't want you feeling intimidated with the math section. So what I want you to do is this. Give me a big smile in the chat if you are, if you feel like you're someone who is intimidated with the math section, if you feel like this is something that is definitely 100% one of your struggle buses, because I know for a lot of us, it is a big thing. So thank you so much for letting me know that you can hear me. It really does help us out. So that being said, first thing, save your math for last. You don't want to get to a point where you're really taking the math and you're doing it as it comes up. That's something that I don't want you to do, because here's why. When we do the math as it comes up on the test, what tends to happen is we tend to get to a point where we let it kind of bog us down. And also, too, the math is potentially a time sink. It's a situation where sometimes you just start doing the math and it just becomes something that you're doing multiplication, division, and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden you spend 10 minutes on one question. Oh my gosh. Now, here's the thing. You shouldn't feel pressured from the time that you have on the test, the fact that this is a timed exam. You shouldn't feel pressured about that. But it is a situation where what I want you to do is I definitely want you to save it for the end, because that is going to be something that is going to potentially get you to a point where it's going to set yourself up for the most success that you can have. Also, the other thing too, and we're going to go through some math questions that I think are going to be relative to what's going to be on the exam today. So we'll get through a couple of them. And the other thing I want to tell you is this: write down everything you know from the question. There's a reason why I want to do that. The reason why is because when you write down everything that you know from the question, you don't have to go back and kind of trace your steps and kind of look at the question and go, all right, let me reread the question. Let me reread it, because it's a situation where sometimes you just are going to be at a point where when you read it and reread it and reread it, it's a situation where you're going to be on a struggle bus. So Shelly Ann said, "Hey Stu, thanks for helping me pass my real estate exam in Connecticut." Well, congrats. And I want to just remind you, in the lower left-hand corner, as you can see on the video, if you go to stujacobson.com, you'll be able to sign up for my new agent coaching. I have that started up. It's group coaching. It's affordable and it's amazing. So head on over to stujacobson.com and we'll be able to help you get started on your real estate career. So that being said, again, congrats. And let's get some other people passing the exam as well. So as I said, I want you to write down everything that you know. Okay, write down everything you know. Also, the other thing that I want you to do is to punch it into your calculator multiple times, because do you know how many times people have the butterfingers and they punch a number in wrong, they put the wrong decimal point in, all this kind of stuff? It's a situation where I want you punching it into your calculator multiple times. Always, 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 because you want to double, triple, quadruple check the math that you're doing. It is so very important, and it's something that is really going to help you on the exam. And the last thing that I want to do, I'm going to delete all these post-it notes. I'm going to put one last thing in there. If you haven't already gotten my math guide, go to mathwithstu.com. And mathwithstu.com, you're going to be able to get my math guide. We'll zoom in really nice and big with that so that you can see it. mathwithstu.com. You could get my real estate math study guide. You could see a couple of videos that I did that are longer videos. So I have on my YouTube channel of math videos that are about like 2 hours long that could really help you out with the exam. So it's something that you could really get a good sense of that. And also, too, my math guide is going to give you, it's like 20 pages of really in-depth knowledge that you would need to solve various problems for the real estate exam. So let's jump into a couple questions, shall we? Let me boot down here. And let's take a look at this. And we're going to do these live with you. So if you are following along, please do let me know if you have any questions, concerns, or burning desires on any of this stuff. So this first one says, salesperson Sally is on a 50-50 split with Nelson Realty. She recently sold a home for $437,000. If the commission due Nelson Realty is 3.25%, how much did Sally make? So here's what we're going to do. And has anyone watched any of my math videos? Do you know what we do first? What's the first thing that we do? And let me just answer Alex's question as we're doing this. Let me show Alex's question up on the screen. Alex said, I have a favorite calculator that I can't use at the testing center because they require me to use theirs, which is frustrating. Yeah, so what happens is this. What I will tell you, and when it comes to the exam, you do have to use a non-scientific calculator, okay? You do have to use a non-scientific calculator, non-graphing calculator. So basically, a dual-powered calculator that is like basic. If it costs more than $5 at a CVS or a drugstore, is probably more complicated than you need it to be. So that definitely is frustrating. But what I would say, Alex, is definitely get yourself to a point where you start studying with the calculator that you're going to use there or something close to it, so that what happens is you're not at a point where you're kind of frustrated that that you have to use their calculator. So that's the thing that I would be telling you as far as that's concerned. So that being said, let's jump into this first question and let us go ahead and see what we could do with this one. So this one says, Sally's on a 50-50 split with Nelson Realty. She recently sold a home for $437,000. If the commission due Nelson Realty is 3.25%, how much did Sally make? So the first thing that we do is write down what the question is asking us. So how much did Sally make? So how much did Sally make? That is the question. Now, what else do we know about this? So we know that Sally is on a 50-50 split. So let me ask you this, for those of you who are in the chat with me live. What does it mean when I say that Sally's on a 50-50 split? What do I mean by that? Okay. So what do I mean by that? We also know that the home sold for, okay, what did it sell for? $437,000. Okay. And we know that Nelson Realty is owed 3.25%. Okay. So someone said, does the calculator at the testing center, okay, does the calculator at the testing center, let me get the right one up there, have the percentage key? So it should. But what I'm going to tell you is this. Definitely 100% you want to go ahead and make sure that you're getting used to kind of converting the decimals, okay? I think converting the decimals is something that's super important. So now we have written down all of the things that we need, okay, from this question. So we don't really need to reread it, right? We don't really need to reread it. It's a situation where we have everything that we need from the question right over here. Now, sometimes in some questions, you might not use everything that you're going to have up on the on your notepad. So it's a situation where, keep that in mind too. All we're doing with this is getting ourselves to a point where we're just basically making sure that we don't have to read this over and over and over again. This is a much more digestible version of that. So someone else said that they passed their exam last year because of your vocab lessons. Yeah, so make sure, if you're still studying, check some of the other videos out. Also, if you just passed, okay, or you're someone who is going to be passing soon, I have this upcoming Friday a webinar that I'm going to be doing just like this, where we're going to talk about how to choose a brokerage. And I'm going to be doing these more often. So check back weekly, because I'm going to be having these up and running, like I said, more frequently, because I have a little more time carved out. So now what we're going to do is this. Let's talk about what it means that Sally is on a 50-50. What was I going to say? That Sally's on a 50-50 split. So that means that basically Sally is going to take 50% of the commission that is coming into the brokerage, and the brokerage is going to get 50% of it. So now that we have this, what's going to be our first step? So if you're here with me live, type in the chat, what is going to be our first step in a question like this? What are we going to do to try to solve this one? So the first step is this. We want to know how much Nelson Realty made, right? Because we know that Sally's on a 50-50 split, right? And we know that she's taking in 50% of what the brokerage is taking in. But we need to know how much money the brokerage is taking in. So how would we figure that out? Well, the first thing that we're going to do is this. We're going to take what the home sold for, $437,000, okay? And we are going to multiply it by, okay, 3.25%. So let me ask this question for those of you who are here live with me in the chat, okay? What is 3.25% as a decimal? What is 3.25% as a decimal? What is that? So that is going to be 0.0325. So we're going to go ahead and punch that into our calculator, and let's see what we get. Now, here's the thing. Remember, we are punching it into our calculator multiple times. We are punching it in multiple times. So 437,000 times 0.0325. Okay. Now, why are we punching it into our calculator multiple times? Because we are human. You are going to, I promise you, cross my heart, you are going to mix up, okay, you're going to put in the wrong numbers at some point. Okay, you're going to do that 100%. So this one is $14,202.50. Okay, that is, and also too, when you get a number, okay, when you get a number, it's a situation where, okay, what you want to make sure that you do is label it, because you got a number, and this is what Nelson Realty will make, right? That's what Nelson Realty will make. Now, what we want to do is this. We want to figure out how much Sally is going to make on this. How much Sally is going to make on this. So how would we figure out how much Sally is going to make on this? And keep this in mind, to find a percent of a number, what we do is we multiply that number by the percent, okay? So if we want to know what 50% of what Nelson Realty made, we would take $14,202.50 and we would multiply it by 50%. And what is that as a decimal? That's 0.50. So $14,202.50 times 0.5 equals, she is getting a commission check of $7,101.25. So let me know. Give me a big smile in the chat, okay? Give me a big smile in the chat in regards to if this helped you out, if you have a good understanding of this now, because you are going to get commission questions. That's why I always like to do commission questions, because I want to make sure that there's no questions that you have on these. So it's a situation where, okay, and keep this in mind, okay, if you're at a point where if you didn't get 7,000, $101.25. Make sure that you punch it into your calculator right, because that's 0.50. So yes, is it going to be a situation where you move it 2 decimal points over? Yeah. So guess what? Here's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a couple different percentages as decimals. So 5% as a decimal equals 0.05. 10% as a decimal equals 0.10. And then 100% as a decimal equals 1.00. So that is basically some simple breakdowns of how the decimals work, because this is a situation where you really want to get yourself to a point where it's easy for you to go ahead and just basically punch in your decimals there instead of relying on there being a percentage sign on your calculator. You can just go ahead and do the math there. So if there are any other questions, like I said, feel free to type them in the chat. I'd be more than happy to help you out. If not, what we're going to do is this. We're going to do one, maybe two more questions, and I'll field any questions that you have in the chat. But let's take a look at this one. This one's a little bit more of a complicated commission question, but not too much. And we're using the same skill set that we just learned in that past one, okay? And we're going to apply it to this. So all the things that we did in the past question, we're going to go ahead and do on this one. So this one says a home sold for $312,000. The listing brokerage of Pellick Realty received a commission of 4%. The selling brokerage of Lighthouse Bay Realty received 2% of the commission. If salesperson Igor sold the home and his split with Lighthouse Bay Realty is 70%, how much did Igor make on the sale? Wow. All right. So we got a lot of things here. So let's write this down. So we want to know, how much did Igor make? Right? So that's our question right here. How much did Igor make? Okay. So let's talk about what we know. We know that it sold for $312,000. Sold for. And always write down everything, even if you think it might not be relevant to the question, because there's going to be some things here. I'll give you a little hint. They're not going to be relevant to what we need to solve for the question. Okay. Pellick Realty received 4%. Lighthouse Bay Realty received 2%. Salesperson Igor makes 70% of what comes in. Now, look at this long question, and now look at how nicely we have it boiled down into a much more chewable form. Okay? Now, let me ask you this. In knowing what we have to do, what the question is asking us, right? How much did Igor make? Is there anything here that we could say is going to be not relevant for us for the for knowing for answering the question? Is there anything here that we don't need? Okay? Is there anything that we need that here that we don't need? So the one thing we don't need here is how much Pellick Realty made. That's irrelevant. So we're going to cross that out, right? Because they're not talking about Pellick Realty. They're strictly talking about salesperson Igor and his business and his basically split with Lighthouse Bay Realty, right? That's really what we're talking about here. So situation is going to be this, okay? What would be our first step here in trying to figure out how much Igor is going to make on the sale? What would be our first step? And something to always remember too, something that they sometimes do in the questions is they'll put in the question basically things like the list price or what someone might have offered. Remember, the commission is based off of what the home sold for. Everything else is irrelevant. So we know that this property sold for $312,000, right? So for $312,000, we're going to figure out how much Lighthouse Bay Realty received. So that's going to be 2%. So what is 2% as a decimal? What is 2% as a decimal? So what are we going to punch into our calculators over here? And remember, we're going to be doing it multiple times. So what is 2% as a decimal? And think back to what we were doing earlier. Okay. What is 2% as a decimal? So that's going to be 0.02. That is 2% as a decimal. So let's punch that into our calculator and see what we get. 312,000 times 0.202. That's going to be 6,000. Okay. 240. Oh, you see, I already had a Butterfingers. That was totally unplanned. That is how much Lighthouse Bay Realty made. Okay. So that is going to be the situation there. So the Lighthouse Bay Realty is making 6,240. Okay. So that being said, okay, what we're going to do is this. We're going to make sure that we have that number labeled because, again, otherwise you're going to just have a bunch of numbers there. What is our next step? What are we going to be doing? And someone asked, okay, and I'm going to put it up on the screen because this is a good one, and I'll tell you where to go for this. So do you have a video of all the different T-bar methods of various questions on the test? I get confused as where to place the numbers. So notice how I haven't used the T-bar formula at all in this, right? Because I'm using just basically some logic. I'm saying, hey, I know that if I have to find out what the percent of a number is, right, then I just multiply it. The T-bar is really set up to help you find out what you should be doing if you don't know. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to put up on the screen basically what you need to know for getting these resources, because I do go into the T-bar formula, but I don't think that it's something that you should really focus on a lot. But if you go to mathwithstu.com, you'll be able to get my math guide. You'll be able to get all of my resources that I have where I go into a little bit more of the formula. But again, it's something that I don't focus on the formula. That's not something that I feel is terribly important. So I really wouldn't focus on it either if I were you. So that being said, what are we going to be doing now? Now that we know that this is how much the basically that Lighthouse Bay Realty made, what are we going to be doing here? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take that and multiply it by 70%. Why? Because we want to know how much Igor made. And 70% as a decimal is going to be 0.70. So let's punch that into our calculator if we shall right now. And what do we get? We get $4,368. And that is how much Igor made. So now, let me ask you this before we wrap up for today, because I just want to go for like 25 minutes or so, kind of give you a little bit of a taste, answer any questions that you have. And I'm going to probably be doing this every week. So keep your eyes peeled, sign up for notifications on my YouTube channel, on all the social media platforms, because it's something that the more that you get notified of all that stuff, the more you'll be able to see what I have coming up. Because as I said, I am going to be doing this fairly more regularly. And on Friday, I'm going to have another webinar here where we're going to be talking about how to choose a brokerage. And we're going to be answering any questions that you have. It's going to be a great one, so don't miss it. And that being said, what I want to tell everyone is this. Have a wonderful, fantastic, amazing rest of your day. And I will see all of you real soon. Have a great one, everybody. Remember, like I said, comment if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to try to help you out. Have a great one, everybody.